So, as an artist, one is fairly used to being asked questions about your creativity. Where do you get your ideas from? Where does your music come from? Why do you have such strange song names? And to be honest, as an artist, I'm also used to making up this whole rotating set of answers that I have because the middle of an interview never feels like the right time to get into the complicated nature of my own creativity. It works because they need their soundbite for the media, I need to get off the hook, and we all need to live happily ever after. But the truth is far more complicated, especially when I look at other artists or take a look around and you see that people seem to leave out the messy bits. They do seem to make it a lot easier than it seems. And the reason for that is that it comes from a deeply personal space. If I was to talk about my creativity, I can't not speak about the long nights, the rejection, the self doubt, the crippling existential questions that one has in those moments. But the thing is, after swimming in this ocean for 8 long years, I feel like I figured out a few things that have helped myself a lot, strengthened my own relationship with my creativity, and I hope it might be helpful to others who are also grappling with their own creativity. So there's this thing called the connection, which I find to be a really, really crucial element of making music. At some point, I realized that learning to use your software or learning a new instrument is not the same as making music. The state of connection or the state of flow or being in the zone is what happens when you have ideas that are abundant. Inspiration is around every corner, and you're able to take it and make it into beautiful music and art. And I've thought so much to myself that if I could figure out how this works, if I knew how to summon inspiration when I need it, then I feel like I would be the ultimate creative machine. I would just stop for nothing, ever. But alas, that's not the case. At some point, I started to realize that my own creativity is less like an on demand service and more like trying to catch a favorite TV show on cable, except the show airs unpredictably and at irregular times. All you have to do is sit in front of the TV, turn it on, and stare at the static until something comes on. Now, this might sound frustrating, but the truth is, when I found out about this, I was actually quite relieved because it gave me something to work with, some kind of a system. So, as I was building my understanding of my own creativity, I went looking for other artists' point of views to see if anybody else had ever thought about this in the same way of creativity as a waiting game. And to my surprise and relief, I found this quote by none other than Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He says, "When I am completely by myself, entirely alone, or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how these ideas come, I know not, and nor can I force them, and nor do I hear my imagination the parts successively, but I hear them all at the same time, together." So the thing is, this quote is actually not by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and I found this out only recently while I was fact checking for this talk. But the fact is that 5 or 6 years ago, when I needed it most, I found this quote. It's a very commonly misattributed quote because this author, Johann Friedrich Rochlitz, actually quoted it in a book in the early 1900s. The fact is, this quote took me through a lot of really important times, and it served as inspiration. And so I decided to leave it in there as it is. The truth is that this became my truth. This is my truth. Creativity is not controlled, it's allowed. Flow and inspiration is elusive, and that's the nature of it. There are times when my mind feels like a mere antenna, just to receive ideas that feel like they're not even my own. The question became how to keep this antenna open, especially when I was transitioning from a bedroom producer into a professional in the industry that brought with it its whole other set of challenges. So, in the beginning, in the early years, anonymity, without my realizing it, was actually really important to me. Because the thing with flow is, personally, I've found that I need to get out of the way as a person. I don't need to put myself in the equation. I see myself as having a passive role, and that's what really enables the flow to happen. It made sense, because when I was searching for an artist name, I wanted to find a name like Dualist Inquiry, which seemed to be not just about myself, but more about my journey as a creative soul. The name also possibly applies to a collective, like a think tank or a group of people. I had this image in my mind of a group of scientists sitting huddled around a table, carefully discussing and conducting this inquiry on life's most important questions. That room is my brain, and those scientists are the different parts of my mind talking to each other, trying to make sense of the world. The funny thing is, when I introduced myself as a real person into the equation, things started to feel a bit strange. So essentially, entering the industry was the end of this isolation and anonymity that had really helped me in the early days. There was a whole new set of factors, a whole new set of influences that I hadn't experienced up until that point, and I wasn't sure how to deal with them when they first arrived. For example, expectations. Sounds simple enough, but when I started, I was making music for myself because I needed to. At some point, it turned into keeping in mind the expectations of my listeners, the expectations of my management, my own expectations. Music went from answering my own need to trying to fulfill obligations. And then there's deadlines. Creativity versus deadlines is one of the greatest challenges of my life. Because, like I said, I've always made music when I needed to, and I had no idea how to cope with deadlines. All of this really dawned on me during this one particular incident that I had, where it was a crucial moment for me. I was on this conference call with managers of mine in different parts of the world, and we were planning a big move. We were gonna basically make my dreams come true, and it was all right there in front of me. We were discussing all these plans of releasing this new music and how we're going to push it out and the collaborations and all this fancy stuff. But there was one thing that the music hadn't been written yet. I hadn't done it. So they asked me how long I needed. And I, a bit foolishly and possibly a bit arrogantly, agreed to a timeline of 2 weeks to write the best and the most important music of my life. So I got into my studio, fully expecting that just like every other time in my life, there would not be any issues. I'll just get in there and write. But my approach was kind of wrong because I ended up living through a special version of personal hell for those 2 weeks. It didn't work at first, and rather than give myself the time and space that I needed for it to work, I ended up pushing myself. I wouldn't let myself get enough sleep because you don't deserve it, because you haven't made enough music, because you're not a real artist. There were so many moments where it could have gone right, but instead, I came out kind of wounded and battered on the other side. Now, when I look back, it makes complete sense why those 2 weeks did not yield any new music, considering how harsh and rude and incompassionate I was towards myself. This is usually behavior I only reserve for myself, by the way, and never ever behave like that towards another person, which was one of the most crucial lessons that I learned from this. Anyway, I lost some of those opportunities, which hurt me really deeply, but I came out with this renewed determination to figure out things about myself, my creativity, and how to be a professional artist so that this doesn't happen again. So there's this metaphor that comes to my mind when I think of my first few years as an artist. It felt like 22-year-old me was Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, and the music industry was this tornado that came and picked me up and put me down in a new land far, far away from home. In this new land, the colors were super bright and saturated, and everything was really beautiful and so interesting. But there was also this sense of discomfort and danger. I felt like being a part of the music industry was forcing me to be two completely opposite people at the same time. And that was really, really challenging. The contradictions were making my mind explode. I knew that I needed to figure out a way to resolve these contradictions, so I made myself a table to understand this better. On the left side are the qualities that I felt were beneficial to me when I was an artist in the studio. I call it the artist or before. And on the right side are the qualities which I have now learned that I need to put on once my music is ready and after it's been released. So, the first thing that you'll see on the side of the artist is that you need to be sensitive because music and art and any kind of creativity is about recycling what you get in terms of emotions, senses. The more you feel, the more you feel like saying. You need to be perceptive because to me, beauty lies in the details, and I don't want to miss any of those details out. You need to be open minded because you never know what's around the corner. You need to be open to criticism and feedback because unless you know how to get better, unless you can take good criticism, how would you improve as an artist? There can be no place for ego. As I said, keeping a passive role in the process of writing music really helped me write more music. Now, on the right side, once you enter the role of a professional, your music is out there. And say if it succeeds, then you have not just a few hundred, but thousands of people and points of view just coming at you. Thankfully, most of these points of view and most of these opinions, most of the people who come to your pages and your channels are there to say supportive things, nice things. But some of these people, boy, oh boy, you need to be thick skinned and you need to be able to filter out, you need to be selective of what you take on board. Because if you listen to everything the same way as I used to, it would literally shut me down. You develop a bit of suspicion about what real motives are, what's good for you and what's not. You need to have a strong filter instead of taking all criticism equally. And you need to know your self worth. That might seem strange given that you made it in the industry, but with so many factors, you need to remind yourself that yes, you are worth it. You need to keep doing this. And there's a fine line between a healthy self esteem and an overinflated ego. But when everything is moving so fast, it's genuinely hard to know what's what. So I'm happy to say that all of this searching, all of this time, hasn't been for nothing. I feel like over the years, I've understood things better. I took my time. I didn't rush myself. And most importantly, I practiced this compassion with myself, this kindness that has really helped me. I'm happy to say I just came out of a long stint in the studio and it didn't always go well, but it was fine. I just waited until it did go right, until the TV came on. And now here I am, just on the verge of releasing a lot of new music that I'm really, really into, and I feel like I did everything I could. But that's not the point. The point is how I got here. I want to share with you guys, with everyone over here, a list of non-negotiables that I now have that I live my life by, which I think will help me in the future to stay in the zone in spite of all the contradictions. The first one is the importance of community. There were times when I was quite isolated because I was touring and traveling so much and so busy, but having a group of like minded artists and friends, people you can connect with, is crucial. Your community is your mirror. They let you see where you're coming from, where you're going, how far you've come. They're your worst critics, your best friends, your competition. And having a community around me is the most important thing for me now as an artist. The second thing is to know when to say no to opportunities. A lot of opportunities come your way, and it seems like it's a better thing. It's bigger, faster, better, stronger. But not everything is better for the artist inside me, and I know how to say no to those things now. Knowing how to say no to deadlines that are too tight. It sounds unreasonable sometimes, telling a number of other professionals, being a professional myself, that, 2 weeks is not enough to write 8 minutes of new music. It sounds a bit unreasonable, but that's just how it works. And I've had to accept it. And you have to stand by yourself as an artist and allow that time. I now have zero tolerance for new things that enter my life, factors, people, ways of thinking, anything that threatens to mess up my internal balance. Sleep is very, very important. I know you may not think and you may not expect to hear this from a musician such as myself, but there are plenty of scientific studies done on the importance of sleep. I have an interesting relationship with my dreams, and a lot of times I wake up with great ideas, and when I'm recharged, my learning from the previous day is integrated better. Sleep is really, really crucial for me. Isolation is also very important, which you need to have. Once you've taken all this stuff on board, you need to let it bubble up, let it filter up. I need to listen really carefully for the quietest parts of my subconscious. When I start hearing that, that's when I feel like I'm getting something worth writing into music. And finally, embracing the special and the mundane parts of yourself. This has a lot to do with being kinder with myself. There are times when I sit and I try to write something or think of some ideas, and I'm just shocked by the boring and mundane nature of my thoughts. In those moments, now I know to give myself a hug. It's okay. It's not always going to be how it's supposed to be, but that's the first crucial step in making it happen. And when you have an amazing day and you say something or do something that you're really proud of, it's also good to enjoy that moment. Give yourself a pat on the back and move forward with strength. So I share all of this with the hope that discussing these less discussed aspects of being a professional musician might help in some way or the other. A lot of us have walked down this road before, and I hope a lot more of you will choose to do so in the future. If you are interested in uncovering your truest creative potential, then it's really important to firstly get out of your own way and to let things happen. It's really important to be okay with making mistakes. It's good to be lost sometimes because you only get lost in new territory, and if you explore, you never know what you'll find. It's really important to keep asking questions and keep your curiosity on its peak. And it's really important to take your thoughts seriously and to act upon them. Being a musician is my dream job, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else in the world. I'm 31 now, and since I started learning my first instrument at the age of 9, music has been the petri dish in which I've grown from one stage of life into another. It's been the classroom in which I've had my toughest lessons. It's been a battleground in which I fought my toughest personal battles. And music is the road on which I plan to lay out the plans for the rest of my life. Music feels like family, except to be a little more specific, it's like an elder brother or sister who may not always be kind or polite, but you know that they love you and you love them back and they'll be with you no matter what until the very end.